Hi guys. I just wanted to apologize for the audio quality in this video being different than normal. I am on a different mic than normal, but that should only be temporary. I will be set up with my boom mic soon. But yeah, it shouldn't sound too terribly bad, just might be a little bit tinny compared to my other microphone, so hopefully you bear with it, and thanks for watching. Hi guys. So I recently lost the Lightning Trapper in Hardcore Trade. I will have a clip play of the death now. It was you could make your comments if you want in the comments below. It was a very silly death. Anyways, here you go. That's not what I pressed. No, I opened the fucking shop. I tried to hit log. I opened the shop. Yeah, I'm dead. And so I'm in need of a new build, and one of my viewers had a really interesting idea of a build that they've played a couple of times now, and that they were kind enough to send me a path of building of. And I'm going to yoink that and edit it somewhat for hardcore, since this viewer does play in softcore but prefers tankier builds, so the build is certainly not crazy squishy to begin with, but I do think it needs a bit of adjustment for a hardcore playstyle. I've already adjusted it somewhat, as there were, some unique jewels that I'll have a hard time getting in hardcore trade, like Forbidden Flame and specific lethal prides and things like that. And I don't have the budget just yet for a Bottled Faith, but that's something we'd eventually want. Anyway, what is the core concept here? What are we playing? And before I forget, let's credit the viewer. This is by Neuropain, was the person who sent this to me in the first place, and they did say they were fine with me making a video on it and making the character, so all above board there. But yeah, this is a Scion. The sub-ascendancies being Pathfinder and Inquisitor. Inquisitor could be swapped over to a different sub-ascendancy. It's just good damage for this build. It's not really core, but Pathfinder is fairly core to one of the tools this character uses, which is Olroth's Charge. This pair of boots comes from Expedition content and gives you adrenaline for 3 seconds whenever your ward breaks, and then slower restoration of ward and a bit of move speed. And this pair that this player has is corrupted for max endurance, but I probably won't go for that right away. And the way that we then power that and keep adrenaline up very, very frequently, if not constantly, is through the use of a Flagellance Iron Flask, or a slightly worse rolled one if you can't get a Flagellance, but you'd want Flagellance for the 7 charges when you're hit by an enemy, plus scaling a bit of block. I would like to get some more. That's one of the things I'm going to work on for the hardcore viability of this character, is try and fit a little bit more block into the build. So maybe path around this area a little more in order to get either Safeguard or Shield, the Shield wheel up there. Because Flagellance just says when you're hit, so not when you take damage from a hit. So blocked hits will still give you charges back. And then, of course, Pathfinder Sub-Ascendancy, which gives very, very solid flask sustain with just passive flask gen and chance to avoid using flasks, and also really good life sustain in the recovery of life whenever you use a flask, which pairs super well with Flagellance, as you can see, is on every single one of these except for the mana flask. So you have crazy good life sustain through that. You can even go for like Leech as an implicit on the gloves if you want to. And then the adrenaline uptime is quite solid as well, because whenever you use an Iron Flask, it restores all of your ward. So whatever broke immediately comes back. And the ward is used as much as an offensive tool, honestly more as an offensive tool than it is as a defensive one, giving you really, really solid adrenaline uptime through Olroths. So that's one of the core tools in play here. But as far as the main skill that the build is going to be using, it will be using Hydrosphere. Now that sort of combo that I just told you of the Olroths and the Scion with the Sub-Ascendancy Pathfinder, you could even do it as a regular Pathfinder. That's super solid for a lot of builds, because adrenaline is just generically quite strong. But this character is going to make use of it with Hydrosphere, because Ashes of the Stars, unsurprisingly, I'm using this amulet again. I made a whole video about how much I love this thing. Ashes of the Stars gives the Hydrosphere a lot more power, because Hydrosphere's baseline quality is 10% increased pulse frequency, which is a very hard stat to scale. You can get that here, you can get that on a Helm enchant, and that's it. But it's a very powerful stat, as the base pulse rate is pretty quick. It's 3 something baseline, or 2.8? I forget exactly what. I suppose I could take off the quality in the Ashes to find out. But it's relatively low baseline, relatively high baseline compared to like baseline cast speed for most skills. and thus percentage scalars on it are quite powerful. And whenever you cast Hydrosphere, it will also briefly hit the target that you're casting it on. So what that means is that you don't just multiply this average hit by your cast rate, you multiply it by the hit rate as well, assuming you've been able to shock or freeze your orb recently. And that will, which is not too terribly difficult to do, with something like an Orb of Storms or a Vortex hit. A Vortex on left mouse is, I believe, how this build accomplishes it. And that will basically double your hit rate as you spam casting on the boss and also get the hit rate out of the pulse frequency. And then ideally get a helmet with the pulse frequency scaling enchant too. So you would take this number and multiply it by these numbers combined in order to get the DPS, which is not too terribly impressive with this particular setup, as I have been tuning down the gear in order to see how it performs with kind of crappy gear. But, you know, he has some fairly well min-max stuff, like a really nice scepter here, and I think a chest piece that has plus gems on it and such stuff like that. A level 5 woke added fire, all sorts of goodies. This build does have a lot of room to scale. I think his damage was almost double what I currently have listed, which, if I do the math real quick, should be a bit over 1 million DPS, so a couple million DPS is more than enough for a hardcore setting. And I'm really, really curious. Like, honestly, I want to give it a shot, if only for the playstyle. Like, moving an orb around at lightning speed, because you're scaling a bunch of cast speed for good damage. So moving this massive orb around at lightning speed and just chunking through packs with it should be really, really fun, because the Hydrosphere actually does damage as it's traveling from one place to another. It doesn't just get, it doesn't disappear in one spot and reappear in another. It moves physically from the one place to the other and damages things that it travels through. So it should be an extremely satisfying playstyle once I get it rolling. I am only through until like Act 4 on the character. I died pretty late in the course of a stream and, got a little bit of leveling done. I have swapped over to Hydrosphere leveling. I am going to stubbornly power through Hydrosphere leveling. It's probably better to level it as Armageddon, Brand, Cremation, or some other typical caster leveling setup, and then swap later. But screw it, I'm going to go for the Hydrosphere leveling right now. And yeah, I've actually been enjoying the playstyle despite how relatively low power it is in Act 4. So I hope that carries through into Endgame. I'm excited to play the build, and I hope to see you in the stream. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and like the video if you did, and check out some of the other stuff on the channel. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.